Welcome to the module on fundraising. Learning objectives of this module. First, to understand the need for funds to run a social welfare organization. Second, to realize the significance of fundraising. Third, to understand the steps and techniques involved in fundraising. And fourth, to be competent with the skills and strategies needed for fundraising. Birth of the development sector. Ever since the Renaissance, the rebirth that spread across the European continent through the next 2 centuries, human civilization has looked for better standards of living. In other words, through the evolution of civilization, human beings have always dreamed of a better quality of life. It was hoped that a system of governance would make this dream a reality for people. Governance is an ancient concept that enabled a structured form of functioning of a society. Different forms of governance have been in existence over the years. However, there always have been some shortcomings in every system. This is when the need for voluntary organizations that would partner with government become obvious. In this context, the role of the voluntary organizations working in the development sector assumed significance. The development sector is an offshoot of varied permutations and combinations that society has witnessed in its quest of a holistic approach to meet the needs of the people, particularly the most disadvantaged communities. The government that came to power found it difficult to deliver all that is needed to its citizens. Natural disasters, wars and certain unpredicted turn of events added to the woes of the government. Hence, there was a need for a parallel structure that would meet the requirements of the people at large. The societal phenomenon can be attributed to the birth of the organizations that were later called non-governmental organizations. And now, we will be discussing on need for funds in development sector. There are different resources that need to be mobilized in view of sustaining any organization. This includes funds, human resources and other material resources. Funds are the backbone of an organization. It is also known as the fuel to run an organization. It is evident that organizations have to be funded by certain sections of the society, or they have to raise their own funds to sustain themselves in striving to achieve the cause for which they have been founded. Organizations in the development sector generally work for different causes of an alternative to government. Thus, these organizations will need funds to work for the societal development. Funding individually or grants through the foundations plays a role in sustaining an organization. Now, next we will be discussing on branding and projection of an organization. Branding and projection of an organization is a skill, and it is one of the most important fundamentals of fundraising is to build a brand of the organization, not just through its concepts, projects and programs which reach out to the needy, but also through effective strategies that reach out to potential donors. Donors are quite meticulous, and that is natural that they would donate to projects that are close to their hearts and are purposely driven. And it is important that the NGOs defines its vision, mission, values, goals and its objectives with clarity. It is also important to project who the target community of the organization is, otherwise it is called the target constituency, and why it is important to reach out to this particular community. This helps donors to understand the genuineness of the organization and the purpose for which it stands. This will thus make a marketing tool to impress upon the funders the reason for which they need to support the organization. Now, the next point we are going to discuss is approaches to fundraising. Most commonly witnessed practices of fundraising could be classified mainly into 3 categories. First, individual funding, which may include donation collection, drives through personal contacts, funding through public events, and third, approaching the government, state or central, large charity foundation or companies which allocates funds under their different activities. The extent of funding, the labor involved, the time required and the outcome varies in each of the said categories. An organization may need a multi-pronged approach to ensure maximum inflow of the funds, so as to ensure its sustainability in long run. Now, the point we are going to discuss is fundraising activities. Persistency and patience plays an important role in raising funds for an organization. Now, we will be discussing some of the various forms of fundraising which voluntary organizations follows regularly. The first is letter writing. While asking for funds, the personal touch matters. Thus, writing a letter could be one of the best and very effective ways of fundraising. A common letter specifying the vision, objectives, goals and projects undertaken could become the content of a letter campaign to be posted as many relatives, friends, former teachers and professors and former co-workers as possible. A good fundraiser is a good fundraiser. The second point we are going to discuss is specific projects and its funding. An organization may come up with a specific project and raise funds for the same. Is a project in hand, there is being pursued, a catchy name could be given for the project and requests could be forwarded to accomplish it. If an organization intends to build an activity center, school or the office, building intended to serve society, it may initiate a campaign to raise funds for this purpose. Here, the general public is widely approached with all details of this specific project. The third category is institutional funding. Universities and colleges have fund allocations for different activities that involve their students, so as to inculcate in them a sense of social service and social sensitization. Here, it is most important to identify the most particular project that the students could get involved. For example, the organization can mobilize student support to organize a rally or a jada or a public program on creating awareness on specific issues. The institution may also have the expertise or required human resource to mobilize, support and organize an event of this kind, as most of the staff and faculty are involved in academic activities. These kinds of projects may generate some funds for the organization and also build a network with the institution for future activities. In case of an organization is associating with an institution, make sure that the institution is given its due recognition and projection. The next point we are going to discuss is the concept of grants. There are many charitable and corporate foundations which earmark a considerable chunk of money for developmental activities. They are always looking for a competent organization who can deliver goods and effectively executive projects that they envisage. They are also open to new ideas and concepts. One of the most common ways to raise money is through grant proposals. What is a grant proposal? A grant proposal is a formal document which is submitted to a donor agency by an organization, most probably a non-governmental organization, an academic institution or a community-based organization, that outlines a proposed project and shows budgetary requirements and requisites monetary assistance in the form of financial resources. What are the essential components of a grant proposal? The first, the objective of the proposal. Second, the outline the problems or unmet needs of the proposed health project intends to resolve and its relevance in the particular country. What are the intended target populations? Explanation on the proposed technology or the strategy that is using in the particular project with a time frame. Stating briefly a proposed work plan in the above mentioned milestones, the time requirement and budget to achieve each milestone and the total time period required for the project. A description on the route by which the proposed project innovations can be made available to or widely adopted by the target population for participation. A stakeholder analysis which consists of primary and secondary stakeholders, key challenges in the project and the human resources involved in the various levels of the project. As it is evident, a grant request provide detailed information not just about your organization, but also the plan of executing the project in a time bound manner. Once an organization is conducted with a project and is quite satisfactorily executed, the chances are bright for extend funding for future projects. It is also important to gain the goodwill of the funding agency or the foundation to stake claim for their grants. The next point we are going to discuss is corporate social responsibility. In today's world, when each one is talking about giving back to the society, corporate have made its matter of policy to set aside a certain percentage of its profits towards the good of society. In India, the government of India has notified that corporate and public sector undertakings should set aside an amount equivalent to percentage of its yearly profit for such cause. In corporate terms, it is called corporate social responsibility. It is in fact an obligation on the part of the public or a private sector company to undertake to a society which is done through donation of funds or services to create a better social environment. It is here that timely proposals have to be set to the respective companies and provided with proper documentation through effective presentations. And your organization may be invited for a presentation before the board members of the particular organization. Follow up and professional rapport with the people who matter is the key to raise an appreciable amount for an organization. Now, we will be discussing the key skills required for a fundraiser. The first, commitment to the cause. Second, ability to ask. Third, ability to communicate. Fourth, ability to influence. Next is ability to relate, persuasiveness, confidence, dealing with rejection, truthfulness, patience, contacts and ability to make contacts, imagination and credibility, organization skills, and finally your ability to organize and reorganize your limitations. Now, we are going to discuss some of the methods of fundraising which are following by the non-governmental organizations. The first is making direct appeal phone calls. Second is writing letters to the individuals. The third is distributing brochures, leaflets and appeals. Next is putting up posters and banners publicly, bringing out a newsletter by the organization, publishing an annual report with fundraising appeal, organizing a fundraising campaign professionally, using the mass media sources like magazines, newspapers, radio and TV, distributing brochures, leaflets and appeals, putting up posters, banners for the cause publicly, telephone fundraising and broadcast appeals, house to house collections, membership fees of the organization, creation of an online giving page, conducting or organizing tournaments like cricket tournament, football, badminton, organizing competitions and exhibitions of various forms, donated banner advertisement in the website of the organization, public places programs, sale of the t-shirts, book fair, greeting cards, and conducting film shows in street plays, organizing tourism packages and event management programs, and finally the provisions of the Income Tax Act like Section 80G and 35 SE. Don't forget, easier to get money for one event than for a long program. And finally, a good fundraiser is a good fundraiser. Thank you for attending this session.